Alright, so we're going to do another 2-minute rebuttal on anything that came up in this foreign policy segment.
Okay, I'm going to start with this. It's amazing how someone could talk about waterboarding so freely and so without any sort of forethought to it. Waterboarding is torture. I don't know if my friend knows it, and there are people who gave their lives for this country so that we can prevent things like that. And there are people who wrote laws. We have laws. We signed the Geneva Treaty so that if our soldiers are captured overseas, that they would be that they wouldn't be tortured. We signed these treaties because it's to protect our soldiers. And if people here if people here are so crass about something like that, it sends a very, very wrong message about what we think about our protections, about our Constitution, and how we want to treat our soldiers. So I just want to put that out there. And when it comes to talking about apologies, he has made no apologies. Obama has just stated the fact that we have made mistakes in the past, and yes, we have. The U.S. government, in terms of whether it being in the George Bush administration or the administrations before that, we have made mistakes. We've made tons of mistakes. We've supported coups. We have armed Contras that destroyed tons of civilians. We have trained terrorists from Georgia, from the state of Georgia, to go into South America and kill tens of thousands of civilians. And if you don't think that's serious, then I don't know what is. So we have made mistakes in the past, and we've owned up to that mistakes. And I think it is incredibly courageous of our president to stand up and say we've made mistakes and we're stopping that from now on. I just want to put that out there. And the other thing is due process that's there in the Bill of Rights is not just for citizens. It's for any person who sets foot on any inch of soil in the United States. I could be a citizen of Kenya and I can come here, and if I commit a crime, I'm held accountable under the laws of the United States. So it's not just for citizens. And the other thing is, this war in Afghanistan is complicated. But one thing I'm not going to do is give President Obama a free blank check without holding him accountable, even though I'm a Democrat and I support him. I just want to say that.
So I just want to go through all of the 3 questions. I think with the first question about sending 30,000 soldiers into Afghanistan, I think the problem here, and the reason why I said I'm against this whole troop surge and just against the occupation in general, is because the Taliban is essentially not a clear enemy. I think when you create a situation where you're creating more animosity, it's going to be a never-ending conflict within the region, because more and more people are going to just be joining the Taliban, joining these terrorist organizations, and they're going to be continuing their fight against the American military. So I don't think that at this point, being in Afghanistan and Iraq at this particular point is actually good for American policy. And I think that we need to start bringing our troops back from the Middle East and not send an additional 30,000 troops. Secondly, Bharat talked about this idea that we've created coups. We've had coups in American history, and Obama's essentially owning up to these particular atrocities not atrocities, but negative actions that America has been taking throughout its entire history. The thing is that he hasn't actually been changing his attitude towards American imperialism in that particular, or this idea of the American empire. I don't think he's actually changing his attitude, and I don't think his apologies towards the other nations is actually warranting any kind of respect, because he's not changing this whole attitude of American foreign policy in general. And the third thing I want to talk about, and I just want to reinforce that, this idea, I think as libertarian, I'm wholeheartedly against torture as well, and that we should be limiting the ideas of torture in general. However, I think that this idea of torture needs to be limited through the Congress, and the Congress needs to start passing laws so that military tribunals are held more accountable, and that torture is limited through the laws that the United States puts in place, but they should not be subjected to the same rights that every single American citizen enjoys here in America.
Quickly about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, let's not forget some of the other atrocities he's done. He chopped off the head of a Wall Street Journal reporter, Daniel Pearl, who was reporting in the region. He put that video on the internet and had his parents, Daniel Pearl's parents, watch him as he chopped off the head. And if the point of the Geneva Convention is that way our own soldiers won't be tortured, our own citizens won't be tortured, well, what's the point if our enemies are not following that same code of conduct? And quite frankly, I don't think there is a comparison between what we did to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to get information to save lives and what he did to kill civilians for no reason, for no real reason. Going back on the second question of this topic, about the Bush administration, that's a popular theme to say the Bush administration ruined all of our relationships throughout the world. But I just want to go through some countries that we had better relationships with after the Bush administration than before. Germany with Angela Merkel, France with Nicolas Sarkozy, Great Britain with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, Israel with the different prime ministers that they've had throughout the time, Colombia, Poland, China, India, Japan, Australia, and the list goes on. So this constant badgering of the Bush administration in terms of foreign policy is just not accurate. That our relationship with many countries in the world has actually improved under the Bush administration. And part of the idea of realism, so to speak, of the Obama administration is that we're supposed to give up a little bit and get a lot more back, that we're supposed to use carrots and sticks. But I want to ask you, what has the Obama administration gotten from Russia? We got rid of the missile defense system that we had in the Czech Republic. What have we got in return from that? We have sold out Israel to try to have peace in the region, but Palestinians have not done anything in return. We tried to reach out to Iran. Nothing has happened in return. So he has failed in that regard, I think.
All right, we're going to move on to the third and final category in the first segment, which is just some general questions. The first of which is, what is the legacy of the Bush administration?
I think the legacy of the Bush administration is, I think Bush will actually go down as this sort of, I always put him as the poor man's Lyndon B. Johnson, and sort of this idea of a liberal hawk, and I'll tell you why. I think while Bush had gone under this idea of being a conservative and a Republican and essentially being, smaller government, but sort of adopting these sort of hawkish policies. First, which comes to mind because I'm going to be a teacher, but this idea of education and No Child Left Behind Act that was passed through the Bush administration, I think that this sort of policy that was created by Bush was actually a bad policy because it puts more strain on the educational system, and as a conservative, he should be giving more autonomy to the local school districts. Also, this idea of civil liberties. The Patriot Act has undoubtedly intruded on many of Americans' civil liberties. And while people will say that you shouldn't be concerned unless you're actually doing a bad act or a terrorist act, I think it gives them a gateway and it gives them a reason to look into your personal life, even if you may not be doing anything. It just gives the government inherently more power in general. Also, and finally, I think the biggest thing is the Iraq War. I think we got into an unnecessary war in Iraq. I think we should have at first focused on Afghanistan. After the attacks in 2011, but I think it's gotten to a point where we're not going to be able to win in that particular situation. But I think as Bush goes down as a president, I don't think that the benefits will actually weigh the amount of cost he has taken on the economy and also just American lives in general as far as foreign policy goes.
I think history generally gives people one sentence. That George Washington was the founder of our country, the father of our nation. Franklin Roosevelt led us through the Great Depression. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and I think that President Bush's one sentence will be that he kept us safe. That within weeks of 9/11, he set in place a complete system of protecting the American people to make sure another 9/11 did not happen. Another 9/11 did not happen. And despite all this criticism from the Democrats and even from the Libertarians, and some of it is warranted, no doubt, but the entire system, the entire frame has stood still and has not been changed. And President Obama has talked a lot about change, but the basic tenets of the Bush policies towards fighting terrorism are still in place. And when you look at Iraq, what Bush did in Iraq and what President Obama was doing in Afghanistan, it's essentially the same thing, a surge. And the Bush legacy will be that of keeping America safe.